The white, fluorescent lights of Varaxon Station's military medical facility cast harsh shadows across Commander Vraxtor's scarred blue face. His four eyes darted nervously around the sterile room, taking in the pristine walls that stood in stark contrast to the bloody battlefields still vivid in his mind. It had been only 2 months since the end of the Third Galactic War. 2 months since the catastrophe at Alter Prime. Yet, the memories remained as fresh as his newest scars. Dr. Velnara sat across from him, her smooth green skin reflecting the cold light. The military psychologist's gentle demeanor belied her important mission, interviewing veterans to help them recover from the mental wounds of war. The entire Kritari Zenith Anger Alliance was still reeling from the devastating psychological tactics and brutal counterattacks employed by the humans. The war ended 2 months ago. Commander, Dr. Velnara began, her voice calm and measured. But Alliance officials are concerned about the psychological state of our veterans. She adjusted her posture, leaning slightly forward. Would you tell me what you witnessed fighting alongside the Earth soldiers? Vraxtor jerked upright, his eyes flashing with panic. The sudden movement made Dr. Velnara flinch. Those memories, he whispered, his voice trembling. They've never left my head. Dr. Velnara recognized this wasn't going to be a typical war trauma session. She skillfully redirected the interview. Perhaps we could focus on their tactics, their actions in battle. Tell me about the humans' military strategies. Something in her words broke through Vraxtor's psychological barriers. He slumped back in his chair, four eyes closing briefly before he began to speak. The first time I saw them in action was at Proxima Station, he began, his voice gaining strength as the memories took hold. Proxima was a strategic Alliance outpost at the frontier. We were under attack by 3 Vorth fleets. His hands clenched at the memory of the reptilian space race that had been their enemy before the humans arrived. We had only 1 ship left defending the station, and we were nearly out of ammunition. Dr. Velnara nodded, encouraging him to continue. That's when Captain Jake Morrison arrived with a small corvette, carrying about 50 Earth warriors. 50 against 300 Vorth vessels. Vraxtor shook his head in disbelief. The odds were impossible. What happened? Dr. Velnara prompted, when Vraxtor fell silent. Morrison split his forces. Half went straight toward the 4 largest Vorth ships, while the other half circled to attack from behind. Vraxtor's voice grew distant, lost in the memory. Those ships fired hundreds of plasma beams, destroying the smaller vessels. But they wouldn't retreat. They just kept coming, even as their comrades were blown apart. He paused, his breathing becoming shallow. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan's fighter was hit and caught fire, but instead of ejecting, Vraxtor's voice faltered. She drove her burning ship directly into the side of a Vorth vessel. The explosion created a strategic opening, allowing the second group to break through. I thought it was just initial luck, he continued. But when I saw Sullivan take down her target with her own death, I realized that humans don't fear dying. Dr. Velnara made a note. The concept of suicide for a greater purpose doesn't exist in Anger culture, does it? Vraxtor shook his head. No. We value preservation of life. But humans. He trailed off, lost in thought. What happened after Proxima Station? Dr. Velnara asked after a moment of silence. Alter Prime, Vraxtor replied, his voice growing heavier. 50,000 civilians waiting for evacuation. 200 Vorth ships surrounding the planet. The Alliance had only 30 escort vessels from various species. 12 of them were Earth ships. General Rick Parker commanded the human forces. His strategy was to let the Vorth land, then destroy their supply lines. Vraxtor's eyes darkened. A team of 12 humans, led by Sergeant Tony Brooks, volunteered for what they called a one-way mission to destroy the main supply depot. I fought alongside them, Watch Brooks and his team joking and laughing on their way to what they knew was certain death. They talked about their families, encouraged each other not to be afraid. Vraxtor's voice grew distant. They threw EMP grenades, planted remote-controlled mines, ambushed 3 Vorth escort ships. In the end, they were shot down. All 12 died, but Alter Prime's supply line was cut. The Vorth had to retreat when they ran out of resources. And then, Dr. Velnara prompted. Staff Sergeant Maria Lopez returned. She was Brooks's second-in-command. Vraxtor's voice took on a note of wonder. I saw her weeping silently in the medical bay, yet simultaneously planning urgently for the next mission. She was a symbol of loyalty and emotional control beyond belief. Dr. Velnara set down her pen, whispering, They mourned and immediately prepared for the next battle? Yes, Vraxtor confirmed. That's exactly what they did. Tell me about Riel 4, Dr. Velnara said, after a pause. Vraxtor shifted uncomfortably. Riel 4 was a planet occupied by the Vorth for 6 months. They had built 3 bases and had 50,000 soldiers. The Alliance had only 20 special operatives, all humans, commanded by Major Dan Carter. Carter didn't attack directly. Instead, he initiated what he called a storm of fear. Vraxtor's eyes darted nervously around the room as he spoke. They broadcast horrifying sounds through the Vorth communication system, weapons firing, screaming, terrifying battle noises. They disseminated graphics and images, pictures of Vorth corpses, exploding ships, Earth soldiers standing triumphantly over enemy bodies. Captain Ellen Foster, their hacker, infiltrated the entire Vorth military network, collecting maps, supply schedules, defense diagrams. Their reconnaissance team, Corporal Julie Martin and Sergeant Kevin White, placed traces of Earth uniforms, badges, and team photos behind guard posts. Vraxtor paused, his breath catching. And Sergeant Paul Davis. He infiltrated 4 groups of 12 Vorth soldiers each, using only a knife in his bare hands. He killed 11 in each group, leaving 1 alive to bring back the message about their psychological state. Dr. Velnara leaned forward, captivated despite herself. What was the result? The Vorth began to lose their composure. They panicked, shot at their own comrades, refused to leave their bases, believing that humans were hiding everywhere. Vraxtor's voice dropped to a whisper. A Vorth commander finally requested direct dialogue. Carter appeared alone, unarmed, at their 4th command center. The Vorth were forced to withdraw from Riel 4 within a month. I witnessed how they defeated their enemy, not with weapons, but with fear. It was a psychological warfare I had never heard of before. Dr. Velnara made a note. First time I've seen an alien shudder at the thought of sounds from a broadcast system. Vraxtor fell silent, his hands trembling slightly. Dr. Velnara waited patiently before asking her next question. What about the diplomatic incident at Nexus Prime Station? The Honor Guard incident? Vraxtor's 4 eyes widened. Nexus Prime was a crystal and light architectural complex where Ambassador Threndel, a Kritari, and his delegation were working toward ending the war. This was 6 months before the war actually ended. He paused, collecting his thoughts. The Alliance had 20 guards from various species, but humans sent only 8 soldiers, led by Captain Frank Turner. An extremist Vorth organization infiltrated with heavy weapons. 50 Vorth soldiers burst through the main gate, with dozens more jumping from the dome ceiling. Vraxtor's voice grew tense as he recounted the events. Alliance forces followed defensive protocol, fall back and form a shield around the ambassador. But then, something unexpected happened. Captain Frank Turner ordered his team to split up and attack. He didn't hesitate despite being outnumbered. He charged into the middle of the enemy, smiling defiantly under the plasma lights. Vraxtor's voice took on a note of disbelief. Sergeant Carol Johnson attacked the vital areas, suffering multiple plasma wounds. yet still carrying wounded diplomats to safety. While returning fire, she saved 7 people. Corporal Matt Rogers lost his weapon, but used a metal fragment to block the throats of 3 Vorth, dispatching them efficiently. Vraxtor's voice grew softer. Turner became isolated. He threw a suicide grenade, killing 6 Vorth before sacrificing himself. Before the explosion, he continued giving orders over the radio so his team could complete the mission. The 7 surviving humans immediately evacuated the diplomats, ensuring the negotiations could continue. Vraxtor's voice was filled with awe. I observed through cameras. They had just lost their comrade. They were collapsing as plasma burns soaked their bodies, but they only allowed themselves to fall after everything was done. A quick victory. 54 Vorth killed, and not a single human surrendered despite severe injuries. What struck you most about their behavior? Dr. Velnara asked. They didn't celebrate the victory immediately. First, they arranged reports, treated wounds, and only then sat together silently crying. They understood loss. But the mission never stopped. Vraxtor shook his head slowly. They controlled their emotions to the point where they could function, and only then allowed themselves to let go. Dr. Velnara noted, they suppress emotions until the mission is complete, then process them afterward. After a moment of silence, she asked, can you tell me about the final battle? Vraxtor's posture stiffened. The space between Alder Prime, Riel 4, and Nexus Prime. That's where the Vorth concentrated their forces. 500 warships, 200,000 soldiers. The Alliance had only 100 ships, 50,000 soldiers. 20,000 of them were Earth forces commanded by Admiral Grace Bennett. Vraxtor's voice took on a tone of reverence. Bennett had a calm demeanor, a gentle voice, but her eyes burned like fire. Lieutenant Commander Joe Miller linked his mind to 3 different ships' control systems. Vraxtor's 4 eyes widened at the memory. Engineer Chief Nancy Brown silently repaired reactors in dense radiation zones, despite the risk of radiation poisoning. Staff Sergeant Roy Campbell led 500 Earth soldiers against 10,000 ground troops. Medic Sandra King simultaneously treated 30 wounded and shot down 20 Vorth soldiers in the middle of the battlefield. The Vorth used their numerical advantage to break through the first line of defense. Many Alliance soldiers were stunned early, falling into defensive positions. Vraxtor's voice grew animated as he described the heroic actions of the human soldiers. Lieutenant Commander Joe Miller lost artificial respiration after the main ship system failed, but he maintained neural connections with 3 spare ships, controlling coordinated attack maneuvers. The screen displayed his portrait, lips pressed tightly, controlling through thought. Even when lung function was lost, his will survived. Engineer Nancy Brown crawled through the radiation-filled reactor room, welding membrane pipes, keeping the Lebanon, a nuclear-powered ship, energized enough to fire its main weapon. Staff Sergeant Roy Campbell commanded the ground forces, setting ambushes in ruins. 500 people moving suddenly like ghosts, attacking from 8 directions at positions of 40 Vorth soldiers, breaking formations. The Vorth panicked, unable to react quickly enough. Medic Sandra King used one hand to bandage wounds, the other to fire a submachine gun, saving 30 comrades, taking down 20 Vorth soldiers, and when blood flowed freely, still holding her position until she ran out of ammunition. The Earth teams didn't need to exchange written communications, just an eye blink, a hand signal. They moved as if unified into one body. Vraxtor said, his voice filled with wonder. The decisive blow came from the coordination between Miller, Campbell, and Brown. A simultaneous attack stream from space, ground, and dark launch tubes, killing all 200,000 Vorth within 18 hours. For the Vorth, this battle was apocalyptic. No soldier survived. 500 ships became floating wrecks. Vraxtor's voice grew hollow. The Alliance was largely defeated. Only 13,000 humans survived, more than 7,000 sacrificed. But we defeated the entire Vorth fleet, as if they had never existed. Vraxtor slumped in his chair. They didn't just win. They completely annihilated the enemy. Dr. Velnara observed the mix of horror and respect on Vraxtor's face. The Anger and Zenith soldiers were so amazed they couldn't believe a species as small as humans could destroy a power like the Vorth. She made a note. This is the moment that Commander Vraxtor cannot stop being haunted by. What happened immediately after the battle? Dr. Velnara asked gently. Admiral Bennett addressed the entire Alliance system. We desire peace, but who now dares to threaten the innocent? Vraxtor's voice was steady but quiet. The remaining Kritari, Zenith, and Anger eagerly formed an alliance against alien threats. A surrender movement spread quickly. Within a week, every enemy fleet that heard about the Vorth's annihilation raised white flags. I witnessed the Anger applauding, but the eyes of dozens of warriors still held traumatic horror. Vraxtor shuddered at the memory. In the medical ward, Dr. Velnara filled pages with notes. They excel at peace, but can become the most terrifying image of war. Dr. Velnara set her notes aside. Commander Vraxtor, what would you like to share with the Alliance about your experience? Vraxtor stood up, all four eyes wide, as he looked at Dr. Velnara. He pulled from his pocket a fragment of rock from Alter Prime. This is the last piece of debris I kept. Each dust particle carries memories of 20,000 Earth-human corpses sacrificed, and 200,000 Vorth corpses vaporized. Dr. Velnara asked softly. What message would you like to leave with the Alliance? Vraxtor sighed deeply. Respect humans differently. They are the most valuable allies when fighting for a just cause, but never make them angry, because then, they don't just fight, they destroy. Vraxtor walked out of the room, his steps heavy, his face haggard. Dr. Velnara watched him leave, her hand trembling as she set down her pen. In her diary, she wrote 2 lines. Humanity, light and darkness coexisting. For those who nurture hope, they are angels. For those who threaten justice, they are the ultimate nightmare. 3 days after Vraxtor's interview, Dr. Velnara found herself staring at the same sterile white walls, awaiting her next patient. The commander's words still echoed in her mind, a haunting testament to the dual nature of humanity. She wondered how many more veterans would come to her office with similar stories, tales of awe and terror intertwined. Her thoughts were interrupted as the door slid open. An Anger lieutenant entered, his blue skin paler than Vraxtor's, his movements jerky with nervous energy. His 4 eyes darted around the room before settling on her. Please, sit down, she said, gesturing to the chair Vraxtor had occupied days before. The lieutenant sat stiffly, his hands clutching the armrests. I understand you served alongside humans as well, Dr. Velnara began. Yes, the lieutenant whispered, on the Neptune defense line. Would you like to tell me about it? She asked, picking up her pen. The lieutenant's eyes focused on a point beyond her shoulder, seeing something she could not. They called it Operation Midnight Sun, he began, his voice trembling. The humans said it would be quick. They said we wouldn't have to fight long. Dr. Velnara leaned forward. And was it quick? A single tear slid down the lieutenant's blue cheek. The battle lasted only 4 hours. 4 hours to destroy a fleet that had held us at bay for 3 years. His voice broke. I still hear the human battle cry in my dreams. For Earth and all who stand with her. As Dr. Velnara listened to yet another account of human warfare, she realized that Vraxtor's experience was not unique. Throughout the Alliance, veterans were struggling with the same conflicted emotions, admiration for humans' effectiveness, and horror at their capacity for destruction. The testimonies continued to flow into her office over the following weeks. A Zenith captain described watching a human commander redirect a disabled transport ship into an enemy cruiser, sacrificing himself and his crew to create a gap in the enemy's defenses. A Qatari engineer recounted how 3 human technicians had worked for 36 hours straight, without rest or nourishment, to repair a critical defense system, collapsing from exhaustion only after the repairs were complete. These stories painted a consistent picture. Humans possessed an unparalleled will to victory, a disregard for personal safety when pursuing a mission objective, and a terrifying efficiency in both conventional and psychological warfare. 6 months after her interview with Vraxtor, Dr. Velnara was summoned to a high-level alliance meeting. The Grand Council chamber of Varaxon Station gleamed with polished surfaces and soft, ambient lighting, a stark contrast to the sterile medical facilities where she had collected so many harrowing tales. 20 representatives from across the Alliance sat around a circular table, their diverse physiologies a testament to the coalition's breadth. At the head of the table sat Ambassador Threndel himself, the Qatari diplomat whose life had been saved during the Honor Guard incident. "Dr. Velnara," the ambassador greeted her as she took her seat. "We've read your reports on the psychological impact of serving alongside human forces. Most illuminating." She inclined her head respectfully. "Thank you, Ambassador. The question before us today," Threndel continued, addressing the entire assembly, "is how we should proceed with our alliance with Earth. The war is over, yes, but new threats will inevitably arise. Do we maintain our close military cooperation with humans, or do we distance ourselves?" A Zenith general, his crystalline appendages glinting in the light, spoke first. "The humans were invaluable allies. Without them, the Vorth would have overrun us all. I vote we strengthen our ties." "But at what cost?" countered an angered diplomat. "You've all read Dr. Velnara's reports. Our veterans are traumatized not just by the enemy, but by witnessing what our allies are capable of. Can we align ourselves with a species so extreme in its methods?" The debate continued, voices rising and falling as arguments were presented and countered. Dr. Velnara listened silently, thinking of Vraxtor and the rock from Alter Prime that he carried, a physical reminder of both salvation and devastation. Finally, Ambassador Threndel turned to her. "Dr. Velnara, you've heard more testimonies than anyone. What is your professional assessment? Are humans a force for stability in our galaxy, or a potential threat?" Dr. Velnara took a deep breath before responding. "Based on my interviews, I believe humans are neither inherently stabilizing nor threatening. They are responsive. When defending allies or innocents, they demonstrate unparalleled loyalty and self-sacrifice. When confronted with aggression against those they protect, they respond with overwhelming force." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "The key, I believe, lies in how we frame our relationship. If we treat humans as equals, respect their boundaries, and align with their moral principles, they will be our staunchest defenders. If we attempt to manipulate them or threaten those under their protection, history suggests the consequences would be severe." A murmur ran through the assembly as they considered her words. "In essence," she concluded, "humans make better friends than enemies. My recommendation is that we maintain our alliance but establish clear ethical protocols for joint military operations. Protocols that respect both their effectiveness and our sensibilities." Ambassador Threndel nodded slowly. "A measured approach. The Council will vote tomorrow." As Dr. Velnara left the chamber, she found herself walking alongside a young Qatari aide who had been taking notes during the meeting. "Is it true?" the aide asked hesitantly. "About the humans? Are they really as formidable as the reports suggest?" Dr. Velnara thought of Vraxtor's haunted eyes, of the lieutenant's tears, of dozens of similar accounts from veterans across the Alliance. "Let me tell you a story," she said quietly, as they walked through the gleaming corridors of Viraxen Station. "About a small corvette at Proxima Station. About a team of 12 at Alter Prime. About a psychological operation at Riel 4. About 8 guards at Nexus Prime. And about a final battle that ended a war." The young aide listened, eyes widening with each detail, coming to understand what every Alliance veteran already knew: that in humanity, the galaxy had gained both its greatest hope and its most fearsome potential adversary. Angels to their friends, nightmares to their enemies, and a force that would forever change the calculus of galactic power. As Dr. Velnera finished her story, she added one final thought. "Remember what Commander Vraxtor said: respect humans differently. They are the most valuable allies when fighting for a just cause. But never make them angry, because then, they don't just fight, they destroy." The aide nodded solemnly, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. Dr. Velnara smiled faintly. Perhaps this was the true legacy of the Third Galactic War. Not just victory over the Vorth, but a deeper understanding of their human allies, and, by extension, of themselves. For in witnessing humanity's capacity for both compassion and destruction, the Alliance species had been forced to examine their own moral boundaries, their own definitions of justice and necessity. As she returned to her office, Dr. Velnara opened her diary and added a new line beneath her previous entry. "In the reflection of humanity's extremes, we have glimpsed both our highest aspirations and our darkest capabilities. May we have the wisdom to learn from both." She closed the diary and looked out at the stars, visible through her viewport. Somewhere out there, Earth's ships patrolled alongside Alliance vessels, a partnership born of necessity and tempered by shared sacrifice. Whether that partnership would lead to a more peaceful galaxy or to new forms of conflict remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never again underestimate the small, determined species from Earth, a species that had proven itself capable of winning not just battles, but the very hearts and minds of those who fought beside them. The next morning, as Dr. Velnara prepared for another day of interviews, a message appeared on her terminal. The Alliance Council had voted unanimously to maintain and strengthen their ties with Earth, while establishing a new ethical framework for joint military operations. Attached to the official announcement was a personal note from Ambassador Threndel. "Your insights were invaluable, Doctor. We are sending a delegation to Earth next month to negotiate the new protocols. Given your unique understanding of both human psychology and our veterans' experiences, we would like you to join the delegation. Your perspective could help build a more balanced and sustainable alliance." Dr. Velnara stared at the message, understanding the weight of the responsibility being offered. She would have the chance to help shape the future relationship between the Alliance and humanity, to foster the positive aspects of human involvement while mitigating the psychological impact of their more extreme methods. After a moment's reflection, she typed her response. "I would be honored to serve the Alliance in this capacity, for the good of all our peoples, and for those who have borne witness to both the light and shadow of human warfare." As she sent the message, Dr. Velnara glanced at the small object sitting on her desk, a fragment of rock from Alter Prime, given to her by Vraxtor before he left Viraxen Station for a rehabilitation center on his homeworld. The commander had pressed it into her hand with a simple instruction: remember, and she would. She would remember all the stories, all the testimonies, all the horror and wonder expressed by those who had fought alongside humans. She would carry those memories to Earth, in hopes of forging an alliance that would honor the sacrifices made, while preventing the need for such sacrifices in the future. Outside her viewport, a human transport ship docked at Viraxen Station, its sleek lines and powerful engines a testament to the ingenuity of the species that had turned the tide of war. Dr. Velnara watched as the first passengers disembarked. A delegation of Earth diplomats come to discuss post-war reconstruction efforts. They looked so ordinary, so unassuming in their formal attire. It was hard to believe that these were representatives of the same species that had inspired such awe and terror on the battlefield. Yet, that was the paradox of humanity that Vraxtor and others had tried to articulate. Their capacity to shift from peaceful cooperation to devastating warfare and back again, adapting to whatever circumstances demanded. As Dr. Velnara prepared to meet with her next patient, she found herself hoping that the galaxy would never again need to witness the full extent of human military capability. The cost of such knowledge had already been too high. But if new threats did emerge, she took comfort in knowing that humans would stand with the Alliance, not against it. And in that knowledge lay perhaps the most important lesson of all, that sometimes the most fearsome force in the universe could also be your greatest protection. The memories would never fade, not for Vraxtor, not for the other veterans, not for Dr. Velnara herself. But perhaps they could be transformed from sources of trauma into foundations for understanding, from nightmares into cautionary tales that might help prevent future conflicts. In the end, that would be the true victory, not the defeat of the Vorth, but the creation of a lasting peace built on mutual respect and a shared determination that such devastating warfare would never again be necessary. As Dr. Velnara welcomed her next patient, she silently dedicated herself to that goal. For the veterans who still carried the scars of battle, for the civilians who had been saved, for the future generations of all species who deserved to know peace, and for humanity itself, a species of contradictions that had proven itself both the most terrifying enemy and the most valuable ally the galaxy had ever known.